Happy Monday. Thank you so much for joining us on a holiday. Over 1 billion people worldwide suffer from irritable bowel syndrome or IBS. That's 15% of the global population dealing with uncomfortable and often embarrassing symptoms. IBS can be a daily struggle impacting quality of life and causing anxiety in social situations. The constant worry about sudden bathroom urgency or unexplained pain can be overwhelming, but there's hope. You're not alone. And there are ways to manage and even reverse IBS symptoms. From dietary changes to stress reduction techniques, relief is possible. And that's why we're really glad to chat on IG Live today with Dr. Max Dula, a gut health expert and chronic illness survivor. During this live, we're going to discuss common symptoms and the triggers of IBS, why IBS is so hard to treat, and tips to prevent flares. I'm going to. Hello. Hi, Dr. Dula.
Hey, Jenna, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Can you see me okay? Is the lighting okay?
Yes. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became a gut health expert.
Yeah, so I think we both went to undergrad at UC Berkeley. That was the first thing that caught my eye. And then from there I worked in finance in New York. And when I was there, my health just really started going downhill, a lot of gut issues. Things weren't working out in Western medicine. I went on disability at age 24, and just ever since then, it's been my lifelong mission in order to solve my own gut issues. And along the way, I began helping other people with theirs. So I went back to chiropractic school, studied a bunch of functional medicine and other holistic modalities. And now I help people with their gut and other gut related issues.
Wow, amazing. So do you think your own health journey really allowed you to better serve your patients?
Oh, 100%. Because, everyone has their why. And sure, I can attend a bunch of seminars and learn, but there's something to be said for actually having been the desperate patient. And when you're a desperate patient, there's a whole other level of motivation. And I've also seen a ton of people. And so I remember what those people did and, all those kinds of things. So I have a lot of tools in my toolkit that maybe I didn't necessarily get from a single seminar that I attended, but rather having been a patient myself.
Oh, I totally believe that experience is golden.
Absolutely.
I mean, like the bad experience, obviously, but then we all learn from those experiences.
Yes.
So today we're talking about IBS. Like, what exactly is IBS?
So IBS is just a catch-all phrase that Western medicine created in order to get a diagnosis code for insurance. Okay. Because it just means you have an upset stomach, irritable bowel syndrome. It's in the name. And it's one of those things that the causes can be different for different kinds of people. But in order to achieve the standards for diagnosing, they came up with the criteria that you need to have altered bowel movements, that you need to have change in stool consistency, pain, abdominal pain that is generally relieved with going to the bathroom, and that this occurs at least one day out of the week for 3 consistent months. How they arrived at these criteria, I have no idea. To me, it doesn't matter if you have bowel issues. You can call it whatever you want. You come to me and I'm going to help fix your gut.
That makes a lot of sense. A list of these symptoms feels like just whatever the criteria is, it feels like super random, and it's so individualized.
Yeah, and that's the thing with a lot of these syndrome-esque type conditions, like fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome. The symptoms is in the name, whereas other things like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, the pathology is in the name. And so you actually know what to do. Well, I need to get rid of the bacterial overgrowth. In irritable bowel syndrome, doesn't tell you anything that what's going on at all. It's just a symptom. So there's a lot of these classifications, and I deal with a lot of these people that don't fall into these neatly fit categories.
You mentioned a few common symptoms of IBS, altered bowel movement, and such. Could you explain some of these symptoms, or is there, if there's anything that's you haven't mentioned?
Constipation, diarrhea, difficulty emptying, nausea, urgency, food sensitivities, cramping,
Mm.
bloating. I would say those are going to cover about 99% of people.
All of these symptoms sounds super, super uncomfortable. Um, what are some like common triggers of IBS?
So I would say that the most common triggers fall into two categories. The first one, there's something called post-infectious IBS, which they've really only started acknowledging that infection plays a role. But it's basically that you have food poisoning or something like that, and then thereafter, the nerves in your gut just remain hypersensitized. Then there's also IBS that can result just from stress and emotions, the gut brain axis. And it all essentially comes down to the hypersensitization or hypervigilance of the nerves in your gut and the signal that it sends to your brain, whether that's due to an infection, toxin overload, emotional trauma, physical trauma. It can be due to all these things, which is why they don't have the diagnosis as a pathology. They just have the diagnosis as a symptom, and which is also why the Western and mainstream medicine doesn't have very many good approaches to treat these kinds of things, other
Because it's not
than just pills for symptom management.
yeah, symptom management.
Yeah.
You mentioned that diarrhea and the constipation, which are like totally like very different digestive problems, but then both can be indicators of IBS.
100%. And a lot of people with other conditions will have constipation or diarrhea. And so then the issue is, okay, well, is the main issue their gut, or is the main issue their thyroid or autoimmunity or other things? And so, I mean, when I take a look at people, there's all kinds of people that come to me, and IBS might be their main thing, or it might be a secondary thing. Either way, what is the root contributing aspect that's contributing to all of these symptoms? And that's my approach, as opposed to, dishing out pills or even something as simple as fiber or probiotics, which can keep you over. And if it does, great. But if it doesn't, you have to go a lot deeper.
Yeah, which we also love this holistic, like functional approach to the root cause. It's so much better than just like, patching it on, like relieving the symptom. And sometimes like relieving the symptom might trigger another symptom, which then doesn't help with traditional Western medicine.
Yep, that's especially the case with pharmaceuticals. Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about the potential role of mold and fungi in IBS?
So mold and fungus are probably not the go-tos that people think about when it comes to IBS. It likely more has to do with bacterial, parasitic, viral, or just neural hypervigilance. But when those things are ruled out, fungus can create the same type of hypervigilance. All these microorganisms release toxins, and these toxins is what creates the neurological hypervigilance. So with fungus, a lot of times we'll see bloating, urgency, cravings for sugars. And mold is neurotoxic. And so if someone also has issues with comprehension, focusing, they have anxiety and panic attacks, and they also have IBS, then I might also be thinking, okay, maybe we're going more towards the mold route. But really, mold and fungi, along with all the other potential infectious agents, can all play a role. And so it's really about playing whack-a-mole and trying to knock it out as one at a time until your body no longer feels the need to freak out. And that's what irritable bowel is. It's a freak out.
Wow. And why do you think like IBS is so prevalent in the human population? I mentioned in the beginning of the live, it's like the number is kind of crazy. It's like 15% of the global population. That's a lot of people.
Yeah, and I would bet that's undercounted just from reporting bias. A lot of people just don't go see their doctors. Um, we just live in a more toxic world than we ever have before. We live in a more toxic world and we live in a more stressful world. And both of those things contribute to IBS.
Is it also what like makes IBS super hard to treat? Or there are other reasons that making it so hard to treat?
It's what makes everything harder to treat, right? We have, it doesn't matter what the condition that you come up with. If it's chronic, these things are likely to have some sort of influence. And now we have more players in the ball game than we've ever had before. And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of times, sometimes it is a simple thing and you kind of get it on the first hit. And sometimes you just have to keep doing that whack-a-mole, plugging away type of thing until you finally get the person's nervous system under wraps to where their bowels doesn't need to express disease.
Are there like stool tests can be used for IBS diagnosis?
I mean, the diagnosis doesn't require any testing at all. It's just what I said earlier about whether you're reporting to bowel habits consistency. But there's stool tests and there's other tests that can be done in order to do a deeper dive into what's going on with the gut microbiome that might be contributing to IBS. So certainly that's definitely one of the tools in the toolkit in order to begin addressing or searching for the root cause issues.
And what food should we incorporate into our diet to prevent IBS or like prevent flares?
So, okay, so those are two different questions. In terms of preventing IBS, keeping a healthy diet that is full of non-toxic foods, so organic, and getting enough fiber in your foods. That's what's going to protect and the enteric or the lining of the nervous system of the the bowel, which is what regulates the nervous system. And in terms of flares and things like that, it's going to be different for every person. But there are some generally heavy hitters. Dairy, gluten, and caffeine are the three things that I find to be the most common irritants for people. But a lot of times, if you have IBS, it's going to come down to keeping a food journal. And ideally, once you get rid of these infections and toxins, you will be able to incorporate foods again. A lot of people think it's one of those things that it's a life sentence where they can never have this food again. And it's like, well, that's if you're doing symptom management. If you want to try to go after the root cause, you should do it temporarily in order to reduce neural excitability and reduce inflammation while we treat. But hopefully, we can reintroduce some of these things back. Some people can eat things that they didn't used to be able to eat. Some people, it's not that easy. It's kind of case by case.
It sounded like to me this really requires a personalized approach because everyone is like so different. And then your symptom management and your root cause is going to be so different from somebody else. And they should really work with someone who knows what they're doing, like for someone like you. So my next question is, how can someone work with you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you can contact me. My website is www.drdrmaxd.com. You can also follow me on Instagram, and there's a link there to my website as well. And yeah, that's probably the easiest way.
What's the process of onboarding a new patient?
Well, I offer a free 15-minute call to people if they want it, and we can chat. But generally, the first session is going to involve some history taking and a pretty thorough questionnaire. The reason why my questionnaire is so thorough is because if I want to run every lab test on you to cover all the bases, it can add up to like $2,000 or so. But this questionnaire will really kind of give me the most likely relevant labs for the individual. And there's a lot of information that I can also glean from the from the questionnaire that I may not actually need a lab for. So that all happens in session number 1.
That makes a lot of sense. And is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, I mean, I think just the fact that IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, I think the major takeaway is that it's just an umbrella term. It doesn't mean that you have IBS and therefore you have the same experience as someone else who says they have IBS, or even that the causes of your IBS is the same. And so there's a lot of people with accounts who say, "Oh, do this for your IBS, do this for your IBS." And if it's low cost, like trying a fiber or trying a probiotic, by all means, if it doesn't cost a lot of money, give it a shot, see if it helps. But if it doesn't, you can really waste a lot of time and money trying all these things, trying all these claims that are treatments for IBS, but nothing is really going to get to the core of your issue until you actually have a personalized, in-depth microscope into what's going on with you, because it is going to be different for everybody. You just all have the same diagnosis.
I completely agree. I also feel that I'm not sure people should invest in, say, like something like probiotic when you already have like a gut issues, because you don't really know what strain, say, you're missing, and then you don't really know your balance. If you don't work with someone who knows what they're doing, it could actually like make your symptom worse, and you just, as you mentioned, waste a bunch of time and money on something, and that's actually making you worse. Whereas, if you can just start working with someone who knows what they're doing, that could long term could save you money and relieve your symptom.
Yeah, I mean, it could make you worse. I mean, there's been studies that up to 50 to 80%, depending on the study, of people with IBS actually have SIBO, and people with SIBO do worse on probiotics. But it's one of those things where how much is one bottle of probiotics going to cost? How much is one bottle of fiber going to cost? If that can hold you over and you don't want to spend the money to see someone like me, then maybe it's worth spending 30, 40, 50 bucks just to see if that does it for you. But if it doesn't, at least you tried, and you need to do a more in-depth look.
That makes sense. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. I think that what you mentioned, like a SIBO IBS interaction between the two, that could be another interesting topic to talk about maybe next
Yeah,
time.
absolutely. Just let me know, and happy to chat.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right.
Have a
Good
good day.
talking to you. Have a good
Bye.
day. Bye.